بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to continue our study of ninth section of Al-Isharat wa al-Tanbihat, and this would be our penultimate session, inshallah. I think next week, inshallah, we will finish. This is chapter 25, and this is about different conditions that Arif may have. Even our Arif who is in the same stage, same level, may have different situation than another Arif, or one Arif in two different times. Sometimes they prefer to have very difficult situation, very difficult, for example, place of rest, different difficulties in life, like not having very delicious food, not having very beautiful, for example, clothes, etc. And sometimes he wants to have the best of everything. This is depending on their condition and what is at that time their attitude, their approach. You should not judge by just seeing the surface. Even the same Arif in two different times may have different situations. So Ibn al-Ra'is says, العارفون قد يختلفون في الهمم. Mystics sometimes may differ in their himma, in what matters to them, in their concerns, in their ambitions. بحسب ما يختلف فيهم من الخواطر, according to those thoughts. خواطر from خطور. خطور means to occur. When something occurs to you, comes to your mind, we call it خطر بباله. So mystics, based on their differences, يختلف فيهم, what is different among them, من الخواطر, from thoughts. They may have different concerns, different priorities. على حكم ما يختلف عندهم من دواعي العبر, in accordance to what is different between them from motives and reasons for ibar. Ibar is plural form for ibra. Ibra is something that you can take lesson from. Quran says فَاعْتَبِرُوا يَا أُولِي الْأَبْصَارِ, or إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَعِبْرَةً. Ibra means a kind of lesson that you can take from a story, from an incident. We read life of, for example, people and get ibra. Dwa'i is plural for da'i. Da'i means motive, what calls us towards action. So because what at that time is important for them and is their motive, they may prioritize ease or difficulty. They may prioritize, for for example, delicious food over food which is not delicious, or vice versa. Clothes which are soft or not soft. وربما استوى عند العارف القشف والترف. Sometimes for Arif, Qashaf and Taraf are the same. Taraf with ta, not Taraf. Taraf with ta means end. End of something, Taraf. We say atraf. But this is Taraf. From the same root we have mutraf, mutrafin, etraf, utrafu. Means well-being, to be well off. Taraf. Qashaf means to be in very difficult situation. When someone is burnt, if your skin is under sunshine and it's heat with the sun, and little by little your skin is damaged, this is called qashaf. So sometimes Arif is in a condition that for him to be rich and well and healthy and look beautiful and nice, or the opposite, are the same. بل ربما آثر القشف. Indeed, sometimes he may prefer something which has qashaf. Qashaf is sifat mushabbah, means something which has qashaf. Means he prefers something which doesn't look nice. He can be in a mode, in a condition that he prefers that. Not only they are not the same, he actually wants the bad thing, the worst one. وكذلك ربما استوى عنده التفل والعطر. بل ربما آثر التفل. Tafl means bad smell, opposite to Atr, perfume, good smell, and Atr means something which smells very well, and Tafl smells something which smells bad. So sometimes good smell, bad smell, very nice perfume, very expensive perfume, very simple perfume, or ordinary smell are the same. Or even sometimes he prefers to go for not the best. He prefers to have something which doesn't smell, or smells maybe even not very good. ربما آثر التفل. Why? وذلك عندما يكون الهاجس بباله استحقار ما خلا الحق. When these two are the same for him, or even the bad one is better, please listen carefully. We are not suggesting to people to be like this. These are not things to suggest. We are just trying to understand the situation of Arif. This is not to recommend. This is naturally happening to Arif. This is عندما يكون الهاجس بباله استحقار ما خلا الحق. This is when what is going on in his mind is to underestimate anything other than God. When he wants to be very focused on Allah and have no regard for other things, then for him, it doesn't matter something is comfortable or not, something is beautiful or not, it smells very well or not, because he is thinking about haqq and he doesn't want to pay attention to ma siwa al-haqq. Okay, so this is one scenario, that good, very good and very bad, or very beautiful and not beautiful are the same, or even he prefers not very beautiful, not smelling very well. But there is another possibility. وَرُبَّما أَصْغَى إِلَى الزِّينَةِ. But sometimes he is inclined towards zina, towards adornments, beauty. وَأَحَبَّ مِنْ كُلِّ جِنْسٍ عَقِيلَتَهُ. From every type he loves the most honorable one, aqila, akram. So when he wants to go for example, clothes, he tries to have very good, very nice, not very luxurious, but very nice. Nice carpet, nice garden, nice food, nice furniture, nice shoes, nice watch, for example. Sometimes Arif can be like this. وَكَرِهَ الْخِدَاجَ وَالسَّقَطَ. And would not like things which are low qualities. When this happens, وَذَلِكَ عِنْدَمَا يَعْتَبِرُ عَادَتَهُ مِنْ صُحْبَةِ الْأَحْوَالِ الظَّاهِرَةِ. This is when he is considering his habit of being in company of good things. So when he in his ahwal al-zahira, in his apparent or his outward conditions, he tries to be very high, because Arif is very much interested in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah is the high, is a'la, is muta'ali, is transcendent. So Arif then from everything wants the best of it. From every category wants the highest degree. فَهُوَ يَرْتَادُ الْبَهَاءَ فِي كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. So he wants baha, he wants light, he wants greatness in everything. لأنه مزية حظوة أو حظوة من العناية الأولى وأقرب إلى أن يكون من قبيل ما عكف عليه بهوى. Because he has great attention to this. Inshallah, Khaja later explains. He says, فَضْلُ الْعِنَايَةِ بِهِ. So he has a kind of additional hidwa or hadwa, means to benefit, to enjoy, or nearness. مِنَ الْعِنَايَةِ الْأُولَى, from the prime attention or prime consideration. Basically, because this Arif is preoccupied with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the highest of the high, he would want from every category, from everything, the most beautiful, the best, the highest one. لأنه مزية حظوة من العناية الأولى, because this is additional nearness and additional benefit from prime attention. وأقرب إلى أن يكون من قبيل ما عكف عليه بهواه, and it is nearer to be similar to what his desires are focused to and are fixed to. Isn't it that his desire is Allah? So he is therefore more tuned towards anything which is either sacred or the best. Even if it's not sacred, the best. You know, in dunya, if something is the best, then would be closest to the sacred, because sacred should be free from deficiency, from problems. So sacredness, which is a kind of a spiritual idea, when you bring it to worldly things, it would translate into high quality, beauty, nice smell. وَقَدْ يَخْتَلِفُ هَذَا فِي عَارِفَيْنِ. Sometimes between two mystics you find differences. One goes for very simple and minimal, you know, bounties of dunya. One goes to the best. وَقَدْ يَخْتَلِفُ فِي عَارِفٍ بِحَسَبِ وَقْتَيْنِ. Or even more, sometimes in the same person, same Arif, in two different times, you find two different attitudes. So not only two, you know, Arifs in the same level, but even one Arif in two different times, you find different attitudes. Okay, this is chapter 25. Now let's see what Khaja Rahmatullah Alayh has to offer. أقول. Khaja Rahmatullah Alayh says, I say, يقال قشف الرجل إذا لوحته الشمس أو الفقر فتغيره وأصابه قشف. قشف as a verb is used when sun affects the skin of someone, and you know he looks, you know, like burnt with the sun heat. Or poverty. Sometimes people, because of poverty, their skin is affected, is like burnt. So when sun or poverty has hit him, and therefore it has changed, his skin has changed, وَأَصَابَهُ قَشَف, then they say qashaf has hit him, has reached him. Who is mutaqashif? Mutaqashif is someone who eats just enough not to die. In Farsi we have expression, we say bukhoro namir. Say, for example, you know, we had just bukhoro namir, means eat and not die, just enough not to die. So يتبلغ بالقوت وبالمرقع. So when it comes to sustenance and qut, like food, with difficulty he manages to eat, very minimal. And when it comes to clothes and shoes, it's muraqqa. Muraqqa is something which, like for example, a clothes which has been torn apart, and then you put another piece of clothes and, you know, with some needle, you know, you stitch it. So this shows that this is not new, this is old. This is a sign of being poor or not paying attention to these things. So muraqqa means this, from riqa, come from this. Atrafathu ni'mah means atqathu, when someone has so much ni'mah to the extent that he becomes inordinate. Atqathu, so taqat. Atqa is mutaaddi, taqa is اذهب إلى فرعون إنه طغى. That is lazim, intransient. Atqa is transient. So atrafathu ni'mah means make him extra blessings, made him inordinate. وهو تفل من التفل. Tafel is صفت مشبه, is adjective, comes from the root tafl, means غير متطيب, not to smell well. If something smells bad, we say tafel. أصغى إليه means mala, to incline towards something. عقيلة كل شيء means أكرمه, the best of it, the most honorable one. عقيلة البحر, for sea, ocean. Aqila means dur, means the pearls which are taken because it's the best thing in the sea, for example. Al-Khidaj means nuqsan, deficiency, imperfection. Saqat radi'ul mata. Mata means good. Radi means mean. So when a product, some thing, a good, for example, I don't know, a mirror, a car, a bicycle, when it is very mean and very low and bad quality, they call saqat. Vartada, it seems that it comes from the same thing as irada. Talaba ma اختلاف في مجيء وذهاب. He asked with coming and going. اختلاف الليل والنهار, like coming of day and night. البهاء الحسن. البهاء الحسن. Husn means goodness with beauty. اللهم إني أسألك من بهائك بأبهاه وكل بهائك بهي. In دواعي السحر we say. المزية الفضيلة. مزية means فضيلة. حظيت المرأة عند زوجها حظوة أو حظوة. When a lady is dear to her husband, is close to her husband, they say حظيت المرأة or حظيت المرأة means قربا ومنزلة, in nearness, in status, she's close to her husband. عكف عليه, اعتكاف comes from the same root. عكف عليه means أقبل عليه مواظبا. When you pay attention to something and you are careful about it and take care of it, this is called عكوف. عاكف is someone who does عكوف. Anyway, these are the words and expressions which are used. Now let's see what's the point. وَالْمَعْنَى ظَاهِرٌ. The whole point is clear. Urafa have different conditions. Sometimes good things with good quality, with high quality, and things with bad quality are the same. Sometimes no, they prefer good ones. Sometimes they prefer bad ones. وفي قوله لأنه مضية حظوة أو حظوة من العناية الأولى وأقرب إلى أن يكون من قبيل ما عكف عليه بحوا. This is the only thing that Khaja explains. The rest he says it's zahir. Just why sometimes Arif prefers beauty, prefers good smell, prefers comfort, prefers house which is large. Why? Ibn Rais mentioned لأنه مضية حظوة أو حظوة من العناية الأولى, and also because لأنه أقرب إلى أن يكون من قبيل ما عكف عليه بحوا. Khaja says وجهان من السبب لميل العارف إلى البهاء. These are two reasons, two causes for inclination of mystic towards baha, towards beauty. One, أحدهما مزية حظوة أو حظوة من العناية الأولى means فضل العناية به, because he has additional attention. Arif sometimes becomes very particular because he wants everything to be perfect. He's very careful. Sometimes Arif doesn't pay attention to these details. Sometimes indeed he becomes very particular. والثاني مناسبة للأمر القدسي, because he is very much focused on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sacredness and holiness. Then beautiful things are more suitable and more corresponding to sacred things. So these are conditions of Arif that we should not quickly judge. If you see an Arif, for example, is not paying attention that much to dunya, this doesn't mean that he is bad or he is good. He is better than, for example, you go to two people, one of them has very small house, one of them has maybe bigger house. You cannot say the one who has a smaller is better or the one who has bigger is better. It's not possible for us to judge. Of course, in general, the best is the balance. Balance is the best. But someone who is very much focused on a spiritual journey and focused on getting closer to Allah, sometimes these things become so marginal for them that they may not strike balance here. They want to give all their energy to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And indeed they find that to spend time and attention on these things are not good. So they don't pay attention too much about how they look, how, for example, their beard or their hair or clothes look sometimes. I'm not saying we should do this. As I said, this is not what is recommended. This is not what to be generalized. But this is just to help us understand what is going on in the mind of Arif. Sometimes, no, he tries to have the best of everything. Again, not in order to have more pleasure, and it's not hedonistic, it's not materialistic. No, it's a matter of beauty. He wants everything to be beautiful, everything to be nice, everything to be organized, everything to be reflecting beauty of God. Inna Allah jamilun yuhibbul jamal. Allah is beautiful and He loves beauty. Inna Allah nadhifun yuhibbun nidhafa. Allah is very pure. He loves cleanliness. So sometimes Arif becomes like this. Ayatollah Hassan Zada Moli has also a beautiful story that you might have heard. It's very famous. A story mentioned in the life of Ayatollah Qadi and also Ayatollah Muhammad Taqi Amuli, because it's about both of them. One of the students of Ayatollah Qadi Tabatabai was Ayatollah Muhammad Taqi Amuli, who was a teacher of Ayatollah Jawadi Amuli, Ayatollah Hassan Zada Amuli. He was from Tehran. He studied in Tehran and Najaf. And when he was in Najaf, he was one of the close students of Ayatollah Qadi Tabatabai. And then he went back to Tehran and he was a great marja', but he tried to avoid marja'iyya. He was teaching fiqh, he was teaching philosophy, irfan, etc. Ayatollah Muhammad Taqi Amuli once was asked to go to Iran to settle in Tehran and become their alim. So he wondered whether it is good time or it's still early. So he had this question in his mind. Another issue was that when in his room he was sleeping, he was stretching his legs towards the direction that his bookshelves were also there. And there were some books, and these books have Quran inside, verses of the Quran. And he was wondering whether stretching his leg is okay or not, because the books were higher. So it's not at the level of his feet, but higher. But because he was stretching his leg to that direction, he was wondering whether this is good or not. So 2 questions so far. Number 1, whether he should accept and go to Iran, finish his studies in Najaf. Number 2, is it disrespectful to stretch your leg and have Quran or religious books above your feet but in the direction? And also Ayatollah Qadi Rahmatullah Alayh was known, and his students knew very well, that he spent lots of time in Wadi Salam. 2 hours, 3 hours he spends time in Wadi Salam frequently. And he was wondering why Agha is spending so much time. He's an alim, he has students, he should spend this time on something maybe more productive, like teaching, etc. Why he's spending 2-3 times in Wadi Salam of Najaf? These were questions that he had in his mind. He went to Ayatollah Qadi Tabatabai, and Ayatollah Qadi Tabatabai told him it's not the time to go to Tehran. It's not the right time. Even without him asking, he gave him the answer. And also he said it's disrespectful to stretch your leg when the Quran or some books that have Quran are in that direction. Ayatollah Muhammad Taqi Amuli in his mind and was thinking how he knows my questions. Then Ayatollah Qazi said, this is because of the time I spent in Wadi Salam. So answered the question that how he came to know this question, and also answered that question that why Agha spent this much time in Wadi Salam. So Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh says this is one of the example of differences among Urafa. Maybe you find an Arif spends 2-3 hours, for example, in a cemetery, in a graveyard. Maybe another doesn't do that, is always busy with other things. You cannot say who is better, who is not better. But this is a matter of the way in that moment things are prioritized, organized, what reflects what for them. Is it the beauty of everything that is reflecting for them more the beauty of Allah, or to distance yourself from dunya and pay attention to Allah, which is their priority? So their conditions are different. Then inshallah we go to the next chapter. We have only 2 more chapters left, and I think we can leave it for inshallah next week, but just for preparation. We have chapter 26 and 27, very short, very brief chapters. Chapter 26 is about the fact that a mystic sometimes becomes heedless of what is happening around him, to the extent that Ibn al-Ra'i says he may not even have taklif at that time. He may not be any more conscious of what is happening, and therefore might not be even responsible. This is one point. Inshallah, we will talk about it. And finally, he has very, very beautiful sentence. And he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is too great and too glorious to be something that many people can reach, to be a river that every person can go and drink from. It's only one by one that people can get access to that source of water. So don't be surprised why we don't have many urafa, because this mountain has very, very high peak and not many people can reach. Allah is not that low that many people can reach him and have wusul. So these are chapter 26 and 27. I just wanted you to have a preparation. Inshallah bi'idhnillah, in the next session we will read Ibn al-Ra'i's text and Khaja's commentary, and would inshallah complete this series bi'idhnillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. We have a question here from Sister Zainab. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Alhamdulillah wa shukran lillah for the class. About the different physical conditions of an Arif regarding clothing, food, housing, etc., whether poor, simple, luxurious, and so on. Does the Arif decide which state they are to be in at a particular time, or is it something which comes on them naturally whilst they are concentrating on al-haq? And the same regarding what they do in their daily life. Thank you.
Yeah, it seems that it's not in their control, it's not planned. Depending on what comes to their mind, what kind of concern at that time they have. So maybe you can say this is based on their background, or maybe you can say this is what Allah wants from them at that moment. You can have different understanding, but it's not something intentional in the sense that you plan for it. Even about other things, some urafa are very much happy, some are very much sad. You say ahl qabz or ahl bast. Some are very always concerned, and some are very happy, or some are very katum, some are very badul. Some of them are very hesitant to share their mystical experiences. Some of them are very generous. So these are differences that they have. Of course, if they were perfect, like imams, they would have similar behavior. But these are not perfect. These are in the state of getting closer to the perfection, and human personal side remains with them. This is different from imams because they are hujjah of Allah, and they have to be role model for all of us. But these things that happen to urafa, you cannot say this arif is hujjah, because the other arif also has the same level of validity, and none of them is 100%.
Subhanallah, that gives a gained appreciation for the level of the Ahlul Bayt. Then we have dear brother Dr. Rangiha, who's also on the line.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah.
I hope you're well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. May Allah bless you.
For the explanation. I had two questions, if possible. The first question is related to those two positions or status that some of the Arafa have. And of course, you said it's not, it's not a recommendation for us. It's just explaining what's going on in their mind. And what you mentioned was, the right thing to do is to be balanced. But just kind of digging that a bit further to understand, when it comes to us who are, trying to become better, who are trying to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when it comes to our lifestyle and, the material, world that we live in, being balanced, does it, taking what you said and what the two kind of sides of types of Arafa, wouldn't it be the case that someone would, say that I would go with the minimum because, naturally if I have less, I know it's not always the case, but, if I have less, luxurious life, or, I want to get a car, a lower class car would also do me, what the middle class car would do, wouldn't that put me in a better position? I know it's about the attachment which matters, not what you have, but still, someone, for a beginner like myself, at the beginning, if you got more, you kind of attach to them more. And also, wouldn't it be recommended that, okay, you go with a lower class car as an example, or clothing or house or whatever, and you say, okay, the rest of it, or the difference I will give, for example, to those who are in need. Wouldn't that itself elevate me more? So preferring I don't want to use, not the worst side, the ugly side, but living a more humble lifestyle than even a moderate lifestyle. Wouldn't that kind of be, more spiritually strengthening and detaching and, rewarding? That's the first question I had. And the second question is about the point that you just also touched upon. What I wanted to ask before you mentioned is about, the Arafat. You said that obviously they have different halat and different types of people, even themselves in their life could, react differently depending on what state they're in. And, you can't take any of them as hujjah. But if these Arafat are supposed to be emulating or getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and following the Ahlul Bayt, do we not have clear guidelines from the Ahlul Bayt about, okay, whether a mu'min should be, happy most of the time or be upset most of the time, or, wear good things or bad things? These are, it seems that they're kind of clearly defined about how we should be. And, these are for that, they give everything, or they've, left the material world, simple things like being happy. It seems like the most, the evident thing to follow the Ahlul Bayt. So why is it that these personal feelings are able to overcome what the Ahlul Bayt tell us? It kind of, based on the explanation, it feels like there is a gap, or there is a, it's more on my experiences and how I feel rather than what Amir al-Mu'mineen, who's Imam al-Arifin, expects me to be like in my personality. I hope I've been able to kind of explain my long question properly. Sorry.
Thank you very much. For sure, none of them would do haram, for example, like israf. They don't, spend things, in excess, for example. Or, for example, they don't, harm their family, for example, because they want to have simple life. Of course, as much as they have control, because many times, there are things that we do and we don't even notice that we are doing. But as much as they have attention, they would not go against Sharia or against obvious things in Sunnah. But as you appreciate, there is a space that our personal, preferences and our personal upbringing, our personal thinking can decide whether you be in this side of the spectrum or the other side, because there's a space that is within permissible, area. It's not, that much defined like by millimeter that you say, if you go a little bit more or less, it's right or wrong. Therefore, there is a rukhsa, there's a space that you can choose. Of course, I believe that if someone is very, very conscious and very, very much thinking about every step, then they are very balanced or close to balance. But it's not very common. There are some of our ulama that you feel they were very careful about every little thing in their lives. But many times it's very difficult to be that careful. So among even great people, we have people that have some maybe lack of balance or some small maybe weaknesses, if we allow ourselves to call this weakness, But for sure not israf, not, for example, going for luxury. But, for example, I have seen among my teachers, for example, who are very spiritual. For example, one of them is very, very organized, very careful about details. You would never find his beard, for example, become long or not organized. Another person is relaxed about this. This is not halal or haram, etc., but priorities and things like this. But for sure, if we go inch by inch or millimeter by millimeter according to Islamic teachings and the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, maybe we can narrow this space, but we cannot limit it 100%, And actually, maybe it's good because people should remain natural to some extent also, because in the end we are not, all the same. Sometimes maybe for me, if I want to pay attention to many details, maybe I am of this character that if I pay too much attention to these details, I cannot then pay attention to more important things. Another person, no, he can pay lots of attention to details. Or for example, if you have a mystic man and a mystic woman, for sure they would have differences in their attitudes.
Thank you. There was a previous question about the lifestyle and choosing in terms of how to buy a car that would be upper class or lower class. So for a beginner, what would be the recommendation? There was the first question, if you remember.
Yeah, I said they don't do israf, they don't go for luxury, but
These are the arafat, but for the beginner level, for someone who's a beginner.
For beginner also, I think the balance is the best, and if you are not sure about the balance, take the lower side, not the higher side, because we are more inclined towards dunya. So if you are going to take a risk of losing dunya, not take risk of other side. Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam said, La usikum bid dunya. I don't advise you about dunya, although you need to pay attention to dunya, but I don't advise you. Why? فَإِنَّكُمْ بِهَا وَعَلَيْهَا مُتَمَسِّكُونَ, because you are already holding on to dunya. So there is no need for me to tell you. Yes, if I see some zahid that they don't pay attention to dunya, I say, you must pay attention to dunya, to family, to job. But most of people are on the other side. So therefore, if we are not sure whether something is too much, worldly or not, it's better not to take risk. But if you are sure that it is okay, it's okay. Otherwise, of course, you can always ask people, who are experienced, who are wise, for advice, who are not attached to this case, like us, because my personal, it's difficult. But if someone else looks at it, maybe it's easier.
Thank you, Sheikh. Now there's one more question from Sayyid Hamid Salam. May I kindly request an example of what state the Arif's taklif may be lifted?
Next week, inshallah.
Next session.
Next week, inshallah. Taklif is not lifted in the sense that he can do whatever he likes, in the sense that he is no longer understanding the situation, and like a person who is sleeping, for example. If someone is sleeping, he is not required to do certain takalif. Yeah? So in that sense, not in the sense that he is understanding and he is conscious, but we say takalif are for beginners. That's not the idea here. Some Sufis have that idea that Sharia is for the beginners. What Ibn Rais says here is different.
Thank you very much, Sheikh. That pretty much is the end of the questions for today.
Alhamdulillah. May Allah bless all of you, and may Allah inshallah help us taste at least these experiences of Urafa, inshallah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin.